Okay, picture the deeply shadowed, incredibly rugged woods of the Cibola National Forest in New Mexico. It's this vast, beautiful, but really isolating landscape. Well, back in 2023, this normally quiet wilderness became the center of a truly chilling discovery when a passerby walking their dog stumbled upon an unidentified body. And for years, she was known only by a nickname. She was basically a ghost in the system. No name, no past, and absolutely no clear reason for being out there. So who was she, and how on earth did she end up in the dark woods outside Albuquerque?
The identity of the Sandoval Star. Let's dive right into this explainer and unravel a mystery that took 3 long, complex years of forensic investigation to finally solve.
To really understand this investigation, we have to start at the incredibly somber crime scene. So, on April 18th, 2023, someone is just out walking their dog, right? And they make this gruesome discovery. Right between milepost 9 and 10 on Highway 165, near the small community of Placitas, human remains were found. And it was horrific. The victim had been burned and left partially submerged in a creek bed right under a bridge. It was a tragic, totally undignified end. And the local Sandoval County Sheriff's Office was immediately faced with a huge problem: a victim with absolutely zero identification on her.
Now, this starkly highlights how investigators really have to latch on to any tiny visual clue they can find when a victim is totally stripped of their identity. Among the few items of clothing recovered, which actually included some black shirts and a sports bra, was a very unique dark blue shirt covered in red stars. Because she had no name, investigators and the public just started calling her the Sandoval Star. It's a striking reminder, isn't it? In the absence of a wallet or a cell phone, the actual fabric on a victim's back becomes literally the most critical piece of evidence police can share with the public.
When you look at the timeline, you really start to see these vast, tragic gaps in this woman's story. Her journey in the United States actually began back in the fall of 2019 when she arrived from Mexico. By 2020, her husband and 2 children had joined her. But then, there's just a massive void. Her remains are discovered in April of 2023, yet it isn't until 3 full years later, in May of 2026, that she's finally publicly identified. You've got to wonder, why did it take so incredibly long to connect a mother of 2 living right there in Albuquerque to a body found just outside the city?
Well, the crucial point here is understanding the structural invisibility she faced. First off, she wasn't a U.S. citizen. Tragically, she was never actually reported missing by her family. And unfortunately, that's a phenomenon we see a lot in undocumented communities. People are just terrified of drawing the attention of authorities or ICE. On top of that, she didn't have a DNA profile in the FBI's standard CODIS database, which, is usually the very first go-to tool for identifying remains. Basically, all the traditional avenues law enforcement uses to identify a body were just completely blocked.
And what makes this case uniquely challenging is how the basic necessity of survival further complicated the search for who she really was. Her birth name back in Mexico was Maria Hernandez-De La Rosa, but to live and work in the Albuquerque community, she used aliases. Mostly, she went by Victoria De La Rosa and sometimes Lupe Hernandez. When police are out there trying to match a Jane Doe to missing persons reports, having differing names creates this massive bureaucratic wall. She was literally living a life hidden in plain sight.
But thankfully, technology and pure persistence eventually caught up. The massive breakthrough finally happened between late 2025 and 2026, and they used the FBI's next-generation identification system to do it. Because she lacked that standard criminal DNA profile we talked about, investigators had to cast a much wider net. And it worked. They finally secured a match using a fingerprint that was actually on file with the Department of Homeland Security. This modern forensic turning point was a total game changer. It's exactly what gave this Jane Doe her real name back, Victoria De La Rosa.
Once her name was restored, this deeply human picture really began to emerge. Victoria wasn't just some headline or a creepy mystery in the woods. She was a 33-year-old mother of 2. She originally hailed from Juchitepec in Mexico, and she lived a very real, active life right there in Albuquerque with her family. They actually lived at the Casa Bonita Apartments over on Carlisle Boulevard. Taking her from this anonymous, unidentified victim to a fully realized person, that is absolutely the most vital step in generating leads for homicide investigation.
To really ground her story in reality, investigators started releasing details about where she spent her days. It turns out Victoria worked at Garcia's kitchen right on Central Avenue until May of 2022. Now, if you know Albuquerque at all, you know Central Avenue is literally the bustling, beating heart of the city. Shifting our focus from that dark crime scene out in the mountains to these lively streets where she served food and interacted with folks every day, it reminds us that she was a deeply integrated, real part of this community.
After her time down on Central Avenue, she took a job at Ma's Cafe Bakery in the Los Ranchos area right before she disappeared. She was an active worker, you guys, a mother providing for her family, walking the exact same local streets that so many people traverse every single day. The reason police highlight these specific locations isn't just about humanizing her, though that's important. It's a tactical move. They are really hoping to jog the memory of a former coworker, maybe a regular customer, or a neighbor who might hold that one missing piece of the puzzle.
Now, because her body was found within the Cibola National Forest, the crime actually crossed into federal jurisdiction, which brought the FBI into the fold. FBI Special Agent in Charge Justin Garris hit the nail on the head when he said, "Violent crime has no boundaries." And the FBI didn't just offer, a pat on the back and moral support. They deployed the full weight of their resources. We're talking advanced laboratory testing, field agents on the ground, and crucially, they brought in their legal attaché office down in Mexico to help coordinate international intelligence.
So while authorities finally know exactly who she is, the case is far from closed. The Sandoval County Sheriff's Office has firmly confirmed that this remains a very active homicide investigation. Now, they have determined the exact cause of her death, but they're purposefully withholding that information to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. And even though police believe her murder was an isolated incident, meaning there's no broader threat to the public, make no mistake, the hunt for whoever did this to her is wide open.
Getting to this point also required an immense amount of international cooperation. Patricia Pinzón, who is the head consul of the Consulate of Mexico in Albuquerque, worked incredibly closely with federal and local agents, and together they successfully facilitated the heartbreaking task of returning Victoria's remains to her grieving family in Mexico this past fall. Consul Patricia Pinzón captured the tragedy of this perfectly when she said, "No family should have to endure the loss of a loved one under such painful and uncertain circumstances."
And that brings us to what we can all take away from this, and frankly, why the police have made all of this public in the first place. They desperately need the community's help. The Sandoval County Sheriff's tip line is 505-867-7350, and you can reach the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. And remember, tips can be completely anonymous. Interestingly enough, police even released photos of graffiti that was near the bridge where she was found. They're hoping the taggers might come forward, not as suspects, but just as people who know that specific area really well and might have seen something out of place.
So we've seen how forensic science, fingerprint databases, and cross-agency teamwork finally gave the Sandoval Star her real name back. But the ultimate lingering question remains: who ended Victoria De La Rosa's life? She lived quietly in Albuquerque, she worked in local bakeries, she raised 2 kids. So what in the world happened between her daily life in the city and her tragic discovery out in the Cibola National Forest? The identity mystery is solved, sure, but the pursuit of actual justice, that's only just begun. Keep this case in your mind, because somewhere out there, the final piece of this puzzle is just waiting to be found.